We're going to talk about strategies and trends and requirements and challenges and all those kind of things that face you as our customers, and then also successes with it. So in this new format we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 months, you know that you're certainly welcome to join us live in these events. You know, we communicate them out ahead of time. We find that a much larger number of customers wind up viewing these from our YouTube channel afterwards. So here on this slide, you'll notice there's a QR code or a little bit.ly link you can use to get there easily. Feel free to look that up for other episodes or to come back and watch parts of this one again too. We want to make these as easy as possible to consume. So this month our topic is platform ownership and governance in the cloud. It's something that has been a topic that many people have had to think about over the last couple of years, right? Because either they're owning a platform for the first time, right? The cloud means that sometimes it's people that are not technical and have no technical background are owning the platform at this point. And other times it is a technical person, but they're used to these instincts and everything that they've learned from decades of on-prem experience, managing your own servers and data and things like that. And it's a very different world in the cloud. So a really important topic for us today. We have with us, Pam is with us today, as frequently happens. We also have Jeff Boortz with us from the state of Texas, the Comptroller's office there. He's got some insights to share and a demo for us here shortly of some things that they've done to help with governance, some solutions, not just the policies themselves, but how they communicate and enforce them that are really helpful. Before we dive too much into that, though, let's do some of our quotes. We always start with some quotes, right? Because they stimulate some thinking. So this one was interesting. It's from a professor at MIT. We use the word digital transformation a lot. And usually we think about the technology transforming, but she had an interesting point here. The technology is transforming you. That may be obvious to us, and it may not. Right? What a lot of times is obvious to us is that our end users have to change. What may be less obvious is that we have to change too, right? The people owning and managing the platform to it. So that was a good reminder. This was a good one from Arizona State, the CIO there. Given the pandemic, all the pivots that have happened, right? There's little room for those who are stuck in the old ways. Thought that was nice, just pointing out that we on the technology side or on the ownership side, we have to adapt as well. Situations like the pandemic and remote work and all those things come fast. You know, we have to be able to move. Let's see. Corporate governance should be done more through principles than rules. It's a good statement. You can apply that to many parts of life, but governance may be a place that we didn't think about that. And then lastly is from the Prime Minister of India. Clearly wasn't talking about technology at the time, but you know, his quote here was about e-governance. The E is for easy and effective and economic, right? So the idea of those three things are what it takes to make good governance. What do you guys think? You know, anybody that's here, you know, feel free to chime in. But maybe Pam, you can get us started. Anything stand out to you there from our quotes?
Yeah, we are working on a SharePoint and then also Power Platform governance policy. And I think one of the things that we've really been focused in on is kind of relevant to principles rather than rules. And so we're calling it guidelines rather than rules. There are always exceptions, and putting out guidelines, best practices, and things like that, I think they're better received, and hopefully people are more willing to talk to us. I think when you have a rule and someone has an exception, they're like, well, they've already made a rule. They're not going to change their mind about this, and so they start looking for workarounds. And when you do principles or guidelines or best practices, they know that there's room for exceptions, and I think they're going to be more willing to have conversations with us about whether or not this is a good place for an exception.
Yeah,
that's what I'm hoping. Point. Yeah. So yeah. I really like that one. And the little room for those who are stuck in old ways. I mean, so I spend a lot of time in Office 365 space and world, and I mean, it changes every week. So definitely key to being successful with Office 365 anyway. I think that's true for Dynamics as well.
Yeah, good point. We had a good comment in the chat. Caroline was saying that easy and governance don't easily sit next to each other in my experience. I think that's been a lot of our experience, right? That's kind of what we're talking about here too, is finding ways to help move that forward and help make that better. The cloud opens up a lot of things, and governance should be one of those too. Yeah, DRC Hess is, or at least was, I haven't talked to her for a few years, but she was somebody I used to see at conferences back when there were such a thing. They're starting up again now, right? In fact, Asif and I are going to a Dynamics conference together in October. Looking forward to that. But anyway, DRC used to talk about this topic of governance a lot. And that was a phrase, the one you just mentioned, Pam, is one that she used to talk about a lot. Governance through guidance was the idea. Instead of trying to lock down the world, give the guidance, give the defaults, the guidelines, those kind of things. Any other thoughts? These quotes spark anything or remind you of anything? Anybody?
I was talking to somebody, this is Caroline. I was talking to somebody yesterday who we were talking just in general about how businesses are approaching things in the post-pandemic world and how some organizations are still trying to go back to how things were, and you can't go back because the whole landscape is different and you have to go forward. So the second quote really resonated with me, having been thinking about that there is no going back. This is a one-way street.
It's a new world, it's moving forward, and it may change again, but it won't be back the way it was. That's a good point. Yeah. Okay, well, let's introduce Jeff a little bit again. He's from the Office of the Comptroller in the state of Texas, and he is a platform owner for, among other things, Microsoft Teams. Welcome, Jeff. Right.
Hey, thanks.
Okay. Good to have you with us. A lot of these things we've been talking about are things that you've had to face.
Exactly.
Right? So you and I were talking a bit before, on our last call, we were talking a little bit about your experience and some of the things you've done. Could you share with us a little bit about what you have done in governance policies for Teams?
Yeah, absolutely.
How that changed, maybe, what you did from where it used to be?
So I'll give you a little bit of a background too. So I'm a SharePoint admin also and have been since 2008. And probably like a lot of organizations, we brought up the platform before we had governance. Hello, you shouldn't do that, but we did because we were forced to. And we learned some hard lessons that way. If you don't have governance in place, it can kind of get out of control. So we actually rolled out Teams during the pandemic. We were working on it, but then the pandemic kind of made it so, because the platform that we were using, WebEx, just couldn't support all of this work from home all of a sudden and doing these meetings. So it kind of prompted us to get Teams rolled out expeditiously. We formed a team, and so my team basically is the SharePoint admins as well as the team admins. So I'll go ahead and share my screen with you and just kind of show you kind of how we got started and what we do. And we made a commitment when we started this 2.5 years ago, per information security and our IT management, that we were going to try to rein this in and do a governance plan from the get-go instead of coming in behind it and trying to do it. And so that really did help with our rollout. It also helps us manage teams in general, helps us prevent team sprawl. It helps us verify that our governance is being met, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, I'll just show you real quick. Can y'all see my screen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this is our governance plan, and it looks like it hasn't been revised since 20. I'm sure we need to do some updates on it. The other thing you need to do is make sure you keep it current, and there's a lot of technologies that have come out with Teams that we probably need to go in and add. But still, it was a nice start.
Struggle is real, though. It is hard to keep up with.
Yeah, and so here's our table of contents. I'm not going to really go, through the whole thing, but some of the things I'm going to show you kind of refer back to our governance plan, and we try to include links to that in any emails. We include links to that in our tickets that we create, et cetera, et cetera. And I just want to scroll down and kind of show you one little area that we focus on. So as you can see, you know, I'm scrolling, and one of the things we did is we came up with a naming convention for all of our teams. If they're organizational, they have a certain suffix. If they're projects, they have another suffix. So we tried to maintain that consistently. In the beginning, we didn't do that, and so there are some teams now that we're having to kind of put that suffix on, but we want consistency. We want to ensure that we have 2 owners for every team, and so, you know, we have the different roles outlined. But what I wanted to show you was, here's our naming convention. So my team is the only one that sets up teams. We don't let users in our agency set up teams. We decided we needed to stop that real quick. We have a very simple process. Just open a ticket, tell us who the 2 owners are, tell us if you want it managed dynamically or assigned. Dynamically would be like a organizational, and I'll show you that in a second. And then give us a brief description, and then we put that in the ticket, and then we move forward. So again, here's our governance plan. I'm more than willing to, you know, share it with anybody outside of this if somebody wants to kind of see how we did it. All right. I have to
Very helpful, Jeff.
I have to go back to my notes. All right. So we actually, to get this review, so we started a Teams review July the 1st, and we're going to do it semi-annually. And so we started July 1st. We'll do it again in January from now on. January, July. It doesn't matter when the team was created. We want a 6-month review at those times. And basically what we do is we have a like a master list. So what is that, Jeff? Well, this is our master list. Whenever we create a new team, whenever somebody updates members or owners, we have scripts that run that keep this thing updated. The original ticket, all of this kind of stuff. It populates the team ID once this team is created, the URL to the SharePoint site. So this is our master global list. And we use this to enforce our governance because we have the owners identified, and that's who we communicate with when we did this Teams review dashboard. So I'll tell you, we're a team of 3. The other 2 guys, I'm getting old, right? I've been here almost 35 years, so it's time to pass the reins. So I decided I didn't want to learn the Power Platform. It's just too much when I'm going to retire in a year. So the other 2 members on my team really took up with Power Apps, Power Automate, flows, all that kind of stuff. And they're the ones that did the really technical stuff. They leveraged this list, and I'm kind of the PR person for this. I sold it to the agency. I know everybody. I, showed it to management, et cetera, et cetera. So it takes a team,
strategy guy.
Right. So you're right. And I kind of coordinate things globally, et cetera. So when we create a new team, we even use this. And so what do you mean, Jeff? So we get a ticket for a new team. This is where we create it. We come in here, we put the title, we put the ticket number, the brief description, what division in our agency it is, who the owners are going to be. We need at least 2. If you don't put 2, this will not work. And then if they want us to put the members in, we can do it. If they don't, we let them do it manually. If it's a dynamically managed team, obviously we do that by budget code so that everybody in IT is on the IT master team that's got 350 people on it, right? An owner shouldn't have to add and remove people in a 350 member team. They don't want to know when people are onboarded. They don't want to know when people transfer. They don't want to know when people are terminated. So that's all done automatic in AD, and then our script just runs against AD and pulls in the budget code and populates the team. And I'll show you that in a second. This means, did we send the owners an email after we created the team? We had to create a separate thing that opens up more information if it's for PMO because they have other requirements, and we use a different template. We switch this to pending, and then when we run the script, any items that are pending in this list, it will process. That's how it works. And then it comes back in and fills in the team ID along with a bunch of other information. Once it's done and it's processed, it goes in this list. If a user who's an owner of a team adds an owner, adds a member, this list will automatically update based on the script that we have running every, I don't know what the frequency is, maybe every hour, maybe every half a day, I'm not sure. We did kind of have to scale it back a little bit. All right, so that's how we create teams. The initial email to start this dashboard review is right right here. So when we started this came from me. This went to every team owner in our agency. And we said, hello, you're receiving this because we're going to start this annual review per our governance guidelines and da-da-da-da-da. We want to make sure, is the team still being used? Are there at least 2 owners? Are the member owners listed correctly? Are the teams members listed correctly? Is the description correct? And then they have a link right here, which I'm going to show you, is going to go to this dashboard that we created in Power Apps, or Power and leveraging Power Automate as well. And we also put a link to ServiceNow if they have to ask for any requests from our team, like we need to change something that they can't change, then they can open a ServiceNow ticket. Initially, we were going to get
just a second. Jeff,
yes, sir.
There's some good stuff in here, and I want to make sure we highlight well.
I can forward it to you if you want me to. I don't mind sharing this with
sure.
I'll forward you a copy, Eric, and then you can put it wherever for people to get to. But what we did is we were literally going to give everybody 2 weeks, and then our automation checked the teams that had not been reviewed and sent a reminder email. And then if they didn't do it for another 2 weeks, we kind of got snippy and said, we're going to CC your management. We didn't do that since this is our first go round. I've been kind of addressing those singly. We only had about 39 people that didn't comply. And so this first go round, we're kind of giving them a break a little bit, but we're going to be serious moving forward. I don't want to have to babysit people, and we shouldn't have to.
Sure.
Unfortunately, some people that go ahead.
I was just thinking the questions you're asking there really, I think, are good for a strategic purpose here, right?
Absolutely.
The purpose of our conversation today, those are spot on because they highlight what you should care about in a governance plan.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
With something like Teams or SharePoint or anything similar, a place where you're creating places for people to collaborate.
Exactly.
It's these kind of things, and if you can, like you described something, it's probably right in the middle of strictness, about creating new teams, right? People can't do it themselves, but you've got a nice, quick, easy way for them to request it and get it done. It's not an arduous process,
right,
to get it.
Well, we recognize that Microsoft thinks everybody should be able to do everything, right? They should be able to do flows.
Yeah.
They should be able to do Power Apps. They should be able to create teams. I work for a state agency. We're a little bit stricter. We don't want to just have it a free-for-all. So that's why we have it locked down to the point we don't anyway. So that's,
and what you're doing here makes that pretty practical. It's a constant balance, right? In governance of providing the structure and the consistency that's needed. You mentioned the naming scheme. If you let everybody create them, you won't have a naming scheme, right?
Right.
So
and
there's good
see,
reasons for it, but this helps balance it, right? It helps.
Absolutely.
It helps mean that, you can open enough that people can request and get teams without, going through the third degree.
Oh, yeah. And we usually get it done within a day. If somebody opens a ticket, we're pretty on top of it. We have it done in a day. And using that script, and the reason we use the script is because our O365 architect said there's certain things that need to happen in our environment for a team to be created. We want to make sure the stuff gets done in AD. We want to make sure the bells, the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And if we do it manually, some of that stuff doesn't happen. We discovered that the hard way. So our script covers all the bases that he needed covered. And plus, it just makes it so much easier. And then they get an email when it's done. So we usually get them done within a day. All right. So that's that email. If you'll notice, there's 359 people in here. So that's how many owners we have total. So we have almost 400 teams, just to kind of put it in perspective.
Wow.
All right. The next thing, sorry, I have to go back to my notes. So now I'm going to open the dashboard. And so that link that was in that email that the owners went to takes them to this. And this was done in Power Apps. It's very intuitive. Actually, the first thing they get to when they open it, they will see this instructions page. We know who they are, obviously, because of how they sign on. So this basically has everything spelled out. It tells them what the legend of the symbols mean. We tell them what this lock means. That means it's a dynamic team. And do all of y'all know what a dynamic versus assigned team is? Do any of y'all use that?
We do, yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, so we
Really
have
powerful
dynamic.
feature.
Yeah, we have dynamic teams set up for most of our organizations, right? Our divisions, our departments, our sections. And keep in mind too, when we first rolled out teams, we met with the divisions, but it was pretty hasty that we had to get all this done. So we had a lot of teams that we created in the beginning that were never used, that were organizational teams. And so this cleanup is an opportunity for us to get rid of those teams that were never used. So that's another reason we do this. And we have a link to ServiceNow. You know, if they need a change, this links directly to our ticketing system. But basically this tells them what they need to do, and then they hit start. And so it's by user. So this is actually me, Jeff Boortz. These are teams, as you can see, that I'm all owners of. So if you look at the legend down here, these are all the teams that I'm an owner of down here. How many are left to review? And they're yellow. So this one hasn't been reviewed yet. Notice how there's no timestamp or name, but all the rest of these have timestamps and dates of when they were done. And here's our naming convention. You can see that's kicked in, so they can verify that. So what they do, say this one hasn't been reviewed yet. So they click on this and it pulls up who the owners are, and it pulls up the members of the team. If there's a dynamic query used, it will list that query right up here. I'll show you one in a minute. And then they certify it. They click here and then they submit. If the criteria is not met, if they don't have 2 owners, if the naming convention is wrong, they can check this, but the submit will be grayed out. So we're not going to let them certify that everything is good until they make sure that they've done. So how do we know that? I'm going to show you in a second from our admin view of some that don't meet the criteria and what happens when that happens. So this little symbol right here means that it's a dynamic team. That means that we use a query to populate this section, whereas the rest of these are just regular teams. And so if you click on it, it'll tell you right here that that's a dynamic team and that we're using the budget code 2Q49. And this is our director. He doesn't match this budget code because he's higher up. So we also added him manually to the query. So that's how you get the information on it, is you click on the symbol. If they go into the team and make a change, they're like, oh, I need to add an owner, then they can add the owner and then they can come back and hit the refresh button and it should have the refreshed data here on the dashboard, at which time then they can do the certification. Okay, if they need to do an update, then they click this button and it gives them instructions on what to do. If the owners need to be updated, submit a ticket. These are on dynamic teams because this is a dynamic team. So it gives them specifics. If it's an assigned team, obviously it's not going to give them this information. It'll give them some other information. And again, we gave them, for the convenience of putting a ticket link in here so they can open a ticket. So we try to make it as easy as we could for these guys. All right.
I love this. I just want to get that right out there. This is brilliant.
Well, let me tell you, my Ting is the person who did this Power Apps app. Reggie is on my team as well, and he takes care of all the scripting and that master list that I told you about. And Jeff just sells it to the agency and says, look what we can do. But you know, it all works together, and we've got a lot of happy people right now, especially information security and especially IT management.
Yes. I bet this is beautiful.
Yeah, so teams needing attention, if there were any, you could, there are none that need attention right here. But again, dynamic teams, ones that are completed, it changes the color, whatever. Now I'm going to show you the admin view that my team sees so that we can look at it globally. So I'm going to click on this, and now notice how there's 374 teams. There's 34 that are pending review. 300 have been completed. 142 dynamic teams. Teams needing attention. How many have been deleted? We added that. And how many are archived? So let me find you one that has that symbol of it needs attention. So the best way to do that is to click here, and it brings these in here. And if I want to know what needs attention, I can tell right here, this doesn't match the 2 owner, right? But say I don't know that. So I click on review and I click on the symbol right here and it says, hey, you got to have at least 2 owners to this team. Now, if it's a dynamic team, as you know, team owners cannot add new owners and they cannot add members. So they have to open a ticket and we'll take care of it, easy peasy. So as you can see, for some reason, we're trying to figure this out. What probably happened is you notice that it's already certified. a user probably left our agency when they did the certification. This was back on June 30th. We sent this email out on June 30th, and notice how she did it on June 30th. Since June 30th, if I had to guess, they have lost an owner or somebody has left the agency. So that's why there's a little discrepancy there if you're wondering. It's not broke, it's just we've kind of discovered this, that, hey, it depends on when the user left the agency. But at the time they did the review, everything was good, or it wouldn't have taken it. So let's look again at pending review. So if you notice, these are all yellow. These are people that just basically sat on their you know what and haven't gone in and done it. But what they'll do is they'll just click on review. They'll check everything. They'll click this and then notice how they can hit submit. If it needs attention, like say this one right here, that one doesn't have the suffix. I can tell by looking at it, but let's see what the message says. So let's click on the message and it says it doesn't meet our naming convention standard. So again, they can fix a lot of this on their own by just going to their Teams client and making the updates, refreshing, and then they can do the certification. So that's basically it from a bird's eye. We also have a search. So if you want to put in caps, it just, you know, we'll pull anything up. Here's one that I can tell it's not been done and it's also got a problem. And what's the problem? The problem is that it doesn't meet the naming convention, right? So the search works great, especially for my team, since we see almost 400 teams. The last view we have is the by division view. So we can look at this by division and see who the owners are, when it was completed, who reviewed it, and what date it was. This is kind of handy if we're just trying to do follow-up. A lot of our divisions may have one person that kind of coordinates all the teams for their division. So they'll hit us up and they'll say, hey, can you just give me a list of all of our division teams and whether they've been completed or not? Well, we can do this and do a screenshot or whatever and give that information to them. So again, if I wanted to choose, you know, data analysis and transparency, then I can whittle it down. As you can see, some aren't completed, some are. So this gives us kind of a bird's eye view too of what we need to address. And then out of that, this subset, you can click on pin. You can use all of these indicators down at the bottom for this subset that we searched on. All right, so that's basically how that dashboard works. I showed you the master list. I showed you the email that we sent to the owners. I showed you the admin view of the dashboard. I'm going through my list. I showed them you the by division. So how do we use VSP with all of this? Well, as I stated before, we don't allow people to create flows. We don't allow people to create forms at this point. We let them use InfoPath in the past, but you know, as you know, that's changed and there's just too much to learn. And we would spend all of our time helping people try to figure out their errors than we can doing it for them. So as you know, Microsoft thinks everybody needs to be able to do everything. So there's hooks everywhere that, you know, you can be on the list settings up here and you can go to the Power Automate or Power Apps and click the down arrow. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're in this dashboard, right? You're a regular user and you say, hey, I want to create a new flow. Well, how do we try to keep people out of here? We can't keep them out, but we do leverage VSP to let them know to stay out. So what do you mean by that? This is what happens, and I can't demonstrate it for you because evidently my test account is not licensed now. I don't know what they did. So this is what it would look like. So we have this for anything, not everything. We have to be real careful because they need to be able to do Power Automate and Power Apps things, right, if they're a consumer, but we don't need them to be able to get to the areas where they create and modify, right? So we kind of had to delicately put some specific URLs in, but I think we've got it pretty much figured out. So if they happen to wander in an area we don't want them to wander into, they're going to get this. This one's for Power Apps. We have a very similar one just like it for Power Automate. And then if they ignore us and they go ahead and do it anyway, because all they have to do is, you know, X out of it and then ignore us and go ahead and do what they were doing, we have another script that runs that identifies, let me find it, that identifies a no-no. So if our script picks up that something was something was created in Power Automate or Power Apps, we shoot them an automated email and it says, per our governance documentation, we do not allow users to do this. Here's the list or library that they tried to do it on. I thought we had a link to our governance, but we don't. But we probably need to put that on there so that they can go look at the governance that says you can't do this or you can't do that. So this is what the user gets. Again, it's all automated, and we get CC'd on this. This is why I have it right now. And we run this, as you notice, this comes from a Power Platform service account. We do a lot of our scripts and a lot of our Power Apps and Power Automate stuff with service accounts. We found that through trial and error, as any of you know that have worked in that, it's very complex, and sometimes you have to use service accounts rather than your own account. Even your admin account that you may use, we do have specific service accounts that we use for specific purposes. And I just wanted to throw out too, if any of you guys want to know the technical end of this, Eric can probably set something up with me, and I can bring my other 2 team members on to show you and give you some direction if you're interested on how to do all this stuff. You know, this took a lot of learning, but you know, my team is awesome and they've really grasped this and taken hold of it. Do we still have problems? Yes. Do we still open a ticket with Microsoft every 2 or 3 days? Yes, because it just never ends with them, right? It's always something, or they change something, or something doesn't work because we're in GCC as well. We're not in the normal tenant. So, and the last thing I wanted to show you, well, I guess that's it. I had a little note here, VSP warning by division, the email sent to users as they customize. That's really it. And then, you know, I was on a call with Eric on Monday saying that they're going to offer, well, I'm going to let him tell you that. Never mind, I'm not going to tell you. He gave me a hint about something. Yeah, he gave me a hint about something that's coming for the Power Platform. So that's kind of cool too. So that's really, this is our user group that we use for SPUG, SharePoint user group. And anyway, I was going to do this to demo the whatever I showed you a minute ago. I think that's it. Eric, is there anything else that we talked about that I left out that I should share?
No, I think that was a very good rundown. Thank you very much for being willing to do it and taking the time to
Absolutely.
come show us.
It's fun. It really is fun, but at the same time, you know, it's nerve-wracking as well, especially when you get stuck on something weird that Microsoft does and you can't figure it out. You know, I think those are the most frustrating things, but you know, we just muddle through it. They know us by name, trust me. I think sometimes we do their quality control testing. I really do. I think they just kind of throw us out to the wolves in GCC and let us identify the errors and problems, and then they fix it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Literally, they're like,
we call it release early and often. Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a bug. We're escalating it to our engineers so they can fix it. Yeah. And I bet we have 5 tickets open right now that are in that very same situation. So, so does anybody have any questions? I mean, I'll be glad to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on, Pam.
In Teams, so people aren't allowed, or you have that, I guess it's like a PowerShell you run that removes the ability for people to be able to create Office 365 groups that blocks their ability to be able to create a Teams, right?
Yes. Well, yes, they cannot create, users cannot normally create teams. Oh, I was going to show you bear with me, let me find it. I was going to show you one other thing. So the dynamic versus assigned. So, you know, this is Azure, you know, which, you know, we can add an owner on the fly or whatever. We actually do a combination of the Teams dashboard and the Azure dashboard. We found that we kind of have to get into both. But if you'll notice here, these are assigned and these are dynamic. So I was just going to show you what a dynamic query is real quick. That's where the team populates on its own, and then users don't get to add and remove members or owners, and they have to put in a ticket. So this is kind of what the query rule would look like. So basically everybody that matches 2B78, or it's this person, and we do have exceptions. The reason these people were probably added is because they may be higher up and they don't fit this budget code. And then we also put in some conditions that make sure they have a license that's assigned to them, because we don't want them showing up if they're not licensed. We pretty much have that going on, but anyway, these are some things to kind of prevent errors that we noticed up front. And so again, usually when we create a new one, we just copy and paste this and tweakle it. We do have some that are rather rather large, like there's a division, fiscal management, and it seems like they have about 15 million exceptions, like this one right here. I mean, look at this query. It's just crazy. Everybody in 3A, everybody in 3E, and everybody in 3H. And, oh yeah, all these people right here too. So it does get kind of crazy. The only bad thing about this is in our offboarding process, you know, this query doesn't update itself, right? So if somebody leaves the agency, this query doesn't remove them. It doesn't cause a problem, but again, the team's review, if they look at that script on their team's review thing and see that all these extra people are added, that's their opportunity to verify, oh, Jared left the agency last year, or, you know, Tanya transferred to another division, and then my team will come in here and edit the query because this isn't automatic. So that's the only downfall about a dynamic query. But other than that, I think it's a real good thing for your large, you know, organizational teams.
Yeah, looks like Carolyn has a question.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm not watching the thing, so I apologize. What you got?
That's totally fine. I am like blown away by what you've done here. And we are right at the beginning of our VSP journey. So just the way that you had the message pop up, like I'd not even considered that as a possibility. So I'm sitting here trying to put my brain back into my skull because it all sort of blew out.
Well, Eric helped me a lot with that, I'll tell you, because I was trying to figure out a way to keep people out. I mean, it was crazy because they wind up there and then the next thing you know, they're doing all this customization. So Go ahead. I'm sorry, Carolyn, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I love your excitement and your passion, and it's very infectious.
Oh, thank you.
How many users do you have, and how many people on your team do you have?
Okay, the agency, our magic number with Microsoft is 3,200, but I believe the actual number of people, that's what we use for licensing. I think the actual number of employees we have is about 28 or 2,900, probably close to 2,900. And then we have a little bit of cush when we have new hires, you know, et cetera.
Sure.
My team, we did have 4. I'm down to 3 right now because of another project. He was an expert in the team that he left before he came to my team, and they needed him back. So I'm down to 3 right now. So I would say 2. I'm kind of the oldie in the group. But the 2 younger folks are the really technical. They're the ones that figure this stuff out, right? As far as the developer end of it. And I try to handle as much of the stuff that I can handle old school, you know, create a SharePoint site, create a team. I try to handle all the tickets that come in for just, you know, normal day in, day out stuff and leave them to do the really technical stuff. But, you know, it takes all 3 of us, really. I mean, that's it. I wish we had a bigger team. We are supposed to get an intern, but anyway, 2,800 people, about 400 teams, and probably, I don't know how many thousand SharePoint sites. And this got the attention of ISO and security and data operations, and they want us to now try to do this for SharePoint, which is going to be huge. And we're working on that right now on, oh crap, how are we going to get this information, right? And so Reggie's working on scripts to try to pull in this stuff. Ting Ting's working on creating a dashboard for it. And we're going to see what we can do. And we all agree it needs to be done. There's probably SharePoint sites that haven't been used in 2 or 3 years. And we just never had a way to identify them and follow up. So we're going to try it with SharePoint, but it may take a little bit of time. But
well, whenever you're done with that, I want to sign up for the demo.
Well, I'll be glad to show you what we come up with for that too. But like I said, if y'all have any questions on how this was done under the covers, hit Eric up or whatever, and he can connect us. Let's just do it that way. It'll probably be easier, and you know, we can meet with y'all or whatever, and I can bring my technical folks on and kind of show you the obstacles they ran into and how we got around this and how we got around that, and you know, because there were things we had to get around. Trust me.
Sure.
Anyway. Yeah, definitely. If you do a follow-up meeting where you dig into this more, sign me up.
Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely.
While I've semi got the floor, as it were, the email that you were sending out reminded me of something that I have attempted to do. I work at the Port of Houston, and Tammy Nyworth, who's also on the call, she's my partner in crime, let's say. It reminded me of something that I have tried to do on the SharePoint side. Mm-hmm. We're also GCC, so we know the redheaded stepchild feelings that you can get.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But I'm screenshot something similar that I have in the spirit of sharing with the other people, something that I've not made as much use of this as I would like, but I think it's something that may be beneficial, and the questions may also be of benefit to somebody else. So I just literally took a screenshot of it to share the questions that we have. So this was for site owners of department sites on our SharePort.
Yeah, it's asking a lot of the same questions.
Very similar questions.
Yeah, exactly. No,
so
I like that.
Just in case that's helpful, I need to use it. I went to the trouble of creating it and then just have not been as consistent with using it. So
well, that's the hard part. So you've got all this done, and now it's not like, now how do you get people to comply? How do you get them to do it? How do you get them to, you can do a lot of this work, and if you don't have some sort of way to kind of keep on them, they're not going to do it. Or some of them will. Some of them are really good. Some of them did the review the first day we sent the email out, and here we are a month and a half later, and some people haven't touched it yet. And that's after 2 reminders and then a personal email from me, and they still just don't want to click a button and say submit. It's not hard. But I was going to show you one last thing. I'm sorry, on the new team. So when we process that script that creates a new team, this is what we send to the owners of the team that we create. It's all automated, says what the team is, and we get CC'd on this as well. So we send it to the team owners. We put the information that they gave us in the ticket. We give them a link to the governance plan. We have an owner guide that we use. We have training videos, and we have a team's website also that we have set up with Q&As and all the latest stuff that comes down from the message center. We test it, make sure it works in GCC, and then if it does, we add it to our I'll show you. It's this Microsoft. No, this is not it. Hang on. Yeah, this is it. So we add it to here, and we have all kinds of new stuff that comes out. So new features, anything they roll out or whatever, we have this out there. And if they want to know more about it, they just click on it, and it should bring up the page. Yeah. And we kind of do them like this, where we collapse them and bring them up. And then if we have screenshots, those show up over here. And so, this is constant effort too. As you know, Microsoft is constantly pushing stuff down. So, but this is hand done. This is not using somebody else's. Just because we have stuff turned off and stuff turned on, we can't really rely on the documentation from Microsoft. So we do all of these, but it makes it fun, And these are things that I can do. These are things that I can do being the non-techie person. I used to be, but not now. Too old to learn all that stuff. So anyway, I'm sorry, I keep talking. Okay, well that's it.
Thanks again for sharing, Jeff. We really appreciate it. Very good example of how these pieces come together. There is, of course, a lot there to unpack. If anybody here is new to this kind of stuff, there's a lot there to look at. But it's a good example of applying some structure, and some guidelines to things, but in the process also empowering people to get their work done. To get what they need and to do those things, and how to be a responsible owner. Good examples of the kind of things that you worry about, that you want to ask people about. Good of all. So thank you very much for that. Anything you're willing to share, feel free to forward it to us, and we can put it out in the the email that goes out to attendees afterwards.
John had a question that says, why did you decide to do it all in automation and Power Apps instead of ServiceNow? Because our ServiceNow team basically is so backlogged, it would take months to get anything done. And whenever we need a small change in ServiceNow, it seems like it takes forever to get it done. So we just decided to do it ourselves.
How long did it take to get the Power App developed and the script?
Well, we've had the list from the get-go, enhancing the list and adding some extra scripts to make sure that we had the information correct and all that. It didn't take that long. I mean, I want to say the Power Apps probably took a couple months, but again, that's working that in with everything else too. So it wasn't a full-time commitment. It was whenever she had some free time and wasn't working with somebody else. So she's a pretty fast learner, and she's really picked it up, but not as long probably as you would think. So yeah.
That is one of the beauties of these no-code things we get in the Microsoft world is, yeah, it's kind of like Legos, right? If you have
Right.
creativity, you can explore and find a way to solve the problem. It's nice.
And John, we don't have external users either associated with our teams. It's all internal. The only time we involve external users is with meetings, and that's it.
Yeah, once you start stepping into external users and teams, that's when it starts getting a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
they decided it from the get-go we weren't going to do that. So,
okay.
And that's fine with me.
Some of the features are really a little problematic with external users too. Like we face that
Well,
sometimes, trying to use external people and channels and things, it gets thorny. Yeah. Well, time check real quick. We are right at the time when we're scheduled to end. A couple of quick things I want to put up here for everybody. This slide that I'm sharing at the moment is an article from LinkedIn that's just about some of the strategic guidance. So some of the things that Jeff talked about in his example, this is about the principles behind some of that. That can help you if you're trying to figure out where to put guidelines, where to put limitations, where to put some structure on things, some good things. It has a list of the top 10 things, top 10 tips. If you're trying to write a governance plan for a cloud platform that promotes people actually using the platform to it. So some good information there for you, either with a bit.ly link or with a QR code. Also wanted to mention, I'm going to skip by a couple of these for the sake of time. But I do want to mention we've got a product announcement too. It's not yet released, but as Jeff alluded to a moment ago, we are adding the beginning of September the ability for you to do inline help icons and walkthroughs inside Power Apps. So not just in the Power Apps Studio overall, but actually in the apps that you deliver to your users afterwards, which really opens up a lot of use cases for you, especially if you're using Power Apps for things like governance. They're coming in. I'll give you a quick idea of what we're looking at here. Let me share a desktop. Don't want to keep you a long time, but want it to be clear what it is we're adding. So I'm looking at a sample Power App here. We just spun up from a template in Power Apps, but you notice there's a help button right up here. So we planted that here in the bar, Power Apps. You'll notice that if we went, there it is, need a little help. You're able to do that just like you could in any other kind of a help item. Play with the inline help here. See, there's the inline help. It's already here, but when you reselect the element, you can hover over all the little pieces in the Power App to be able to plant those inline help. We noticed in Jeff's example that he built, they did a lot of this stuff themselves just by building elements in the Power App. And of course, you can still do that, but that obviously adds time to your build complexity. So with this new release coming up the beginning of September, you'll be able to use the VisualSP system you're using for all the other stuff inside those apps too. By the way, this also works inside the Office web apps. If you're a Dynamics customer, it works in Business Central. A couple of other places where there were some limitations due to the Microsoft's page structure. We've come up with a way to get that in. So good stuff coming there. I don't know why my browser won't refresh for Word here. So good stuff coming. We're excited about that. We think you will be too once you see it and get to use it a little bit. Great. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Jeff, very much once again. Sharing some of your expertise and your strategy and the solution you built.
Absolutely.
Good stuff there. And those kinds of concerns are classic governance concerns that happen no matter what platform you're in. If it's in Microsoft, SharePoint, Teams, we have one customer that's doing something similar in OneDrive, which a lot of companies haven't thought about yet. But some companies, people share lots of things from their OneDrive site, and they're doing a similar kind of review in OneDrive. So lots of places it could be, even outside of the Microsoft world, Slack, or lots of places where you might have these different containers that are owned by people and some way to keep up with it, apply some structure, some housekeeping to it. So thank you very much for all that. Thank you, everybody. Stay tuned. We'll, as always, send out an email follow-up that's got some artifacts from this, print out of the presentation and a link to the recording in our YouTube channel and whatever Jeff is willing and able to share. We'll roll all that up in there. Thank you, everybody. Next month, Asif is going to be at the Power Platform Conference
I'll
in
be
Orlando.
there also.
Pam will be there too. Great.